Hi, I'm Jason Sterling. I'm a member of the EA Creator Network, and today this is part 2 of the America Camps Campground, the second live stream condensed down into a sort of speed build type of form, a sort of a outline of what I did during the particular live stream, the 2-hour live stream. So we're going to take a look here, and we're going to start by up-marketing the outside of our main buildings here. We're going to start with the roof of the bathroom, the communal bathrooms. We're going to put in some skylights to let some natural light down into the interior. Then I extend out the eaves over the sidewalks around the building. And I put a small pony wall around the top just to give it a little more height, a little more definition. I raise it up even a little bit higher, and up front, I build a sidewalk. There was nothing up front yet, no sort of sidewalk, no sort of step up before you enter the building. So I pull that out, and then I add an overhang to it as well. I dress up the overhangs with some friezes, right? Some of the friezes from Growing Together, I believe is where these came from. They look really great. They do have a sort of Western feel, and they really fit in with this particular sort of campsite style, wooden, warm woods. And I put in a couple of columns, both front and back. And around back, I put in some rocking chairs. I'd done rocking chairs on the camping cabin porches. I thought in order to be nice, I'd throw a few rocking chairs there on the outside of the main building that are sort of public use, right? Since the camping cabin rocking chairs would be just for those cabins, I'd throw a few out here, kind of homey, kind of old-fashioned, kind of rural. That way, if you're staying at a tent site, you can maybe sit there and rock while the kids are in the pool, because we're going to put the pool right there in that blank space in front of those rocking chairs. And that's what I do next. I put in the pool and I outline it with a fence. You can see I start with a little platform that is at the same height, because I do have a slight sort of foundation on our main buildings there. So I have a very slight foundation. I want to have the same foundation for the fencing. So I want the fence to be at the same height, the same level as the main buildings. So I build a platform, I put the fence on it, I shrink the platform, and then that leaves just that amount of foundation under the fence itself. After that, I jump into one of the big things I really wanted to do on this live stream, and I really wanted to do for this camp. Right now, the camp's completely flat. Now, that is not entirely unusual with the KOA. A lot of KOAs are completely flat. So like Amarillo, Texas, Nebraska, completely flat. And sometimes they'll go in and deliberately flatten out the lot. That way, it's easier to have, tent sites. But I've also been at a lot of KOAs in Arizona or South Dakota or Arkansas or out in North Carolina where there are hills. So I wanted to have at least a little bit of a rise here for some of our tent camping sites, just for a little bit of realism and a little bit of, this is going to be in a rocky area, kind of mountainous area. So it makes sense there'd be a little bit of rise for some of these sites. And once I have the pack, because this will be finished off in a live stream, once I have access to the Adventure Awaits pack, I'll use, if there's rocks in Debug that actually tie into this world, I'll use those. If not, I'll use rocks, I don't know, from the base game. Or another good one is Pets has some good rocks. Snowy Escape has some good rocks. Big mountainous type of rocks. I'll use those to kind of define some of the edges and give it a little bit more of a rocky appearance, as though we are in sort of a mountainous, rocky area. It takes a little bit of time to line all this out, of course, and you'll notice I do use that sort of trick with using terrain tools where you can flatten out your hills, right? Flatten out your rises or your little bumps in the ground in order to place like the picnic table, or I do it with a tree, I do it with other landscaping. So you can place it flat, and then when you take that flooring out, the landscape will rebound around the object that you've just placed, so that it feels like it's not floating as much. Sometimes it literally is floating, because the game will read the level, sometimes the highest point of that particular little bit of rise in that grid square as where things should place. And so it'll be risen up above the surface a little bit. And it does look odd, especially if you're down on a sim level. Also with landscaping, if you do that, it just looks like the tree in that case is actually growing out of the ground and the grass is growing up out of the ground. So you can see I do a little bit of that during part of this alteration of this part of the campground, which ultimately is one of my favorite parts of this build, is the tent camping campgrounds. That's always the most fun part of camping. Now it takes work. You have to set everything up. It's harder. It's harder than using a little cabin, but it is my favorite part. I really, really enjoyed doing that aspect of it with my son. Without the assets, of course, of the new pack, Adventure awaits. I'm going to put in a couple of horseshoe pits. One of those pits will change to archery. So we'll have both horseshoe and archery here on the side of this camping cabin for the kids or the adults to participate in while they're camping. Okay, as you can see there, we just went through a little bit more sort of detail work in the bathrooms and out by the pool. I do that constantly, especially when I'm play testing or even when I'm recording a video. I'll look at a scene and think, I really should put some more stuff here or maybe put a little something here to make it look a little more realistic. That's what was going on there. I also do that in the game room. I remember, hey, I've been putting sort of books in here. And during the live stream, I kind of touched on, it'd be nice to have maybe kind of a lending library, or I sometimes see it listed as like take a book, leave a book. So if you're done reading a particular book on your vacation, you could leave it there and you could take another one in exchange that you might want to read throughout the rest of your vacation. Or maybe if you're coming back later, maybe you stay at this KOA semi-regularly, you could take it and read it and bring it back later and just put it back, on the tabletop there with the other book. So I thought that'd be kind of cool to represent that idea here in our activity room. After that, I go through and I add a ton of lighting because I've put no lights in essentially so far except for the bathrooms. So I go through and I put in a ton of lighting with the sun turned off, of course, so I can see how much effect it actually has. Lighting's kind of weird in The Sims sometimes, where you put in one light and it literally blinds you. And then other times you put in 10 of a light and you still can't see anything in that room. So I go through and do lighting for a little while. And then I decided to bring in my family for some play testing. Two of them immediately leave. I guess it was too close to work and school. And Max heads off to school. Reg heads off to work. That leaves Grant and baby toddler here, Hooper, to run around the camp and check things out for the day. So I do kind of send them through the paces of checking different areas. There's really not much I'm concerned about with this camp because it's built pretty much in tune with normal Sims building. I did use move objects on, of course, but most of it is very routable. The thing that you probably saw there, though, I'm glad I brought my family here because it did kind of jar my memory. It made me think of it. People do have pets, and so I went ahead and I put out a pet feeder and a cat box back by the camping kitchen. I kind of forget about pets sometimes, and I'm not sure. I've never tried this because when I'm playing, I just add it to the build. I'm not sure if you can bring a pet feeder with you when you take pets places or a cat box with you when you bring, pets with you. So I went ahead and just added it in here. I had space and I thought, well, that'd be a nice touch, right? Because most KOAs do allow pets, and be a nice touch to say, hey, we've got like a pet feeder set up already and a cat box if your cat prefers a box over just going out in nature. Now, one reason why I always play test, and I did that reason, bore out this time, there are sometimes things that I wouldn't expect to be an issue that do end up being an issue. And one of them in this case was terrain building, right? I obviously put the terrain where one of the tents went a little too steep. all right? A little too steep. And my sim did not want to just climb up the hill. And I didn't want to put any stairs in. While sometimes you might see stairs if it's particularly steep to get to your campsite at let's say a campground. In this case, I didn't feel like it was that steep, and it's more natural that they're just going to walk up this little rise to get to their campsite. And I felt like it just more authentic. It was more authentic. So I went through, I played around with the terrain just a little bit, a little smoothing here, a little smoothing there. And what do you know? Of course, then my sim could easily get to his actual tent to sleep. And, I think, what was there, like the grills up there and stuff, eat, sleep and eat. Okay, now we're rapidly coming to the end. I have a few sims running around the final few minutes here at our camp, America Camps Campground. I'm going to close it out with asking you to please hit like, subscribe, and notify. We're going to finish this with Adventure Awaits. We're going to finish it with assets from that pack coming up in just a few days. This is Friday, the 26th of September, and the pack arrives on October the 2nd. Now, I believe the important members of the EA Creator Network have received access to the pack already. The back of the Creator Network bus with a bunch of other people. And here in the back, we get access a couple of days early. I don't know the exact date. The exact date has not been announced, but usually it's a couple of days early, like 2 or 3 days. So by early next week, Monday, Tuesday of next week, the rest of us should have access to the pack. And my first live streams will be to finish up the builds that I'm waiting on to just add assets from the new pack for them to be done. So please hit like, subscribe, and notify. Join me for those particular builds being finished. And then of course we're going to jump into gameplay. I've got a lot. I'm really excited for this pack. I really am excited for this pack. For one thing, I do, even though it's not really a camping pack, it kind of is, right? It kind of is, but it's really designed for getaways and custom venues with camping as the excuse here, with a big kid focus. And I'm a big family player in The Sims. And I love camping with my son, especially when he was younger. We had a lot of great memories. So it's a great walk down memory lane with The Sims for me with this pack. I hope it works. Dear God, please let it work. So I hate I have to say that. I hate I have to pray that it works. But the last couple of packs, I think have worked pretty well. Even if you weren't happy with, even if you felt like it was light and it didn't come with enough stuff, I do feel like they worked pretty well. Like I don't remember a whole lot of problems with fairies or a lot of problems with, what did we have before that? It all gets lost in my head. It gets lost in the ether because there's so many. There's so many packs. But the last couple of packs, like Life and Death, I don't remember having any problems with. Business and Hobbies, I don't remember having any problems with. So definitely I would say I've got my fingers crossed. Hopefully no issues. And hopefully you'll be here with me to go through some of that gameplay and some of those live streams. And so by hitting like, subscribe, and notify. And until that time, thanks for watching.